This is PwC's vision for analytics and AI transformation, an end-to-end solution that can empower your business to extract more value from your data. Whether you're in the business of developing cutting-edge products or trying to help provide customers with next-level service or fishing, we can team with you, helping you harness your own sea of data and fueling your bottom line.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone. This is track 2, session 16-2, democratizing data through an enterprise data marketplace. And this is going to be a fascinating panel discussion that's going to be led by PwC. I'll turn it over to them in a minute and they'll introduce themselves. But you know, if any of you sat through Doug's presentation just now, it was a research that he did on high-performing organizations, and what he found in the use of external data, and actually data in general, is those high-performing organizations actually use their data in a much more effective way. And we all know that, especially through COVID, the use of external data has become more and more relevant. So whether it's through a marketplace, participating in a marketplace for data monetization, for democratizing your data, I mean, it's a fascinating new technology that all CDO need to be aware of. So with that background, I want to turn it over to our colleagues in PwC. We're going to run the session, like always, 50 minutes, and then we'll stop for Q&As. And so, you know, with that, I'll turn it over to the team.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Karthik Umakanth. I'm a partner at PwC, a part of the data and analytics technology practice, and I focus primarily on our clients in the pharma and life sciences sector. I'm also PwC's data marketplace accelerator leader, so I help do this kind of work across sectors and help our clients, not just in the pharma space. I have two amazing panelists here joining us today. Kent, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kent Supancik. I'm the Associate Vice President of Enterprise Data at Eli Lilly and Company. So I'm part of our Advanced Analytics and Data Sciences organization.
And Srini Nanduri.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Srini Nanduri. I work for Advanced Auto Parts. It's an aftermarket parts reseller. It's one of those companies that's going through a transformation. My role is Vice President for Enterprise Analytics and Data Management, which means I look at data assets across the organization. How do we leverage it across the company to drive insights and analytics?
Thank you, Srini. And so in our panelists, you see people at sort of two ends of the spectrum of a data marketplace. Kent has been through this journey over the last 2.5, almost 3 years now, helping stand up capabilities, including data marketplace for Eli Lilly. And Srini has set up a lot of the foundational aspects of what a data program needs to have in order to get to a marketplace. And so we have in our panel people that can provide both those perspectives. I also wanted to introduce my team here who will be joining me in this presentation. So I have Anirban Chatterjee, please wave, Director in our Data and Analytics Technology practice. Again, Anirban is one of the leaders who's helped our clients actually build the capability from the ground up. Some of that gray hair can be attributed to marketplace implementations. And Victoria is a senior manager in our practice. She's helped our clients actually stock the shelves. So it's great to have a marketplace, great to have a capability. How do you get data defined, productized, and put on the shelves that people actually care about? Victoria. And I'll quickly flip to what we hope to cover here in the next 55 minutes with you. We're going to start out very quickly. We're going to keep the slideware short, and just to kind of aid with the startup of the conversation, we're going to talk about what is our rendition of a data marketplace. It's a vision that we've helped craft for our clients, and they share with us. So what is that, and how do we hope to deliver value through a data marketplace? That's where we'll start. We'll turn to our panelists for some comments on why did they think this was the right thing for them? Why was this the right thing for Eli Lilly 3 years back? And why does Srini feel like this is the right thing for Advanced Auto Parts as they move forward? So we'll get some perspectives. Where we're going to maybe change this up a little bit from maybe some of the other panel sessions that we've had is we're actually going to have a demo for you. So we'll show you what a data marketplace looks like in action. Kent has been kind enough to volunteer to share Eli Lilly's data marketplace. This is a live active asset that has been implemented over the last 2 years. So we'll have Victoria and Anirban do a quick demo of what that looks like. And then we'll stop for another round of panel discussions in terms of how has this asset transformed the way people within this organization, Eli Lilly and potentially at Advance Auto, how has this changed the way in which they interact with data through multiple lenses? And then we'll end with some time for Q&A from you all in the audience, as well as the online audience that we have here. So with that, I'll dive right in. So we'll start out with what is a data marketplace. Again, we think of data marketplace as an intuitive experience that brings all data stakeholders together. It doesn't matter if you are a consumer, a producer, a curator, or a custodian of data. This is an intuitive experience that aims to bring you all together to help you drive and deliver to your data analytics outcomes. Think of it in simple terms as a Amazon-like experience, but what you're trading and working with are data products versus widgets that you would go to Amazon for. Now, in order for this to come to life, we often look at all of the interactions that need to happen between those different stakeholders within the data continuum across the 4 themes that you see here. So when we talk about find being the first theme, we're talking about being able to not just search, but browse and discover all available data products within an organization. Not just look at them at the cursory metadata level, but really understand them. Where did they come from? How did they get there? What are the endpoints available if you did want to access that data? And then who are the people behind the data, their owners or their stewards that help manage and maintain those data products? That's what we talk about, or those are the interactions that a marketplace aims to enable when we think of the find theme. The second theme that we focus on is the access theme. It's great to know what's available, what could be potentially reused in your context, but where it gets real is, can you actually access it? And in order to know if you can access it, it starts with how is it? Is it sensitive data? How has it been classified? What are the policies that governance actually use in the context of what you're trying to do with it? And knowing that empowers you to go through the right steps, hopefully in a streamlined manner, to go from I'm requesting access to actually been given access. And then it culminates with you being provisioned the data, not just knowing I have access and I'm going to raise an IT ticket, but actually culminates in you getting physically provisioned that data so you can actually use it. The third theme that a lot of the interactions within Marketplace are anchored on trust. And we've heard in several sessions about trust thus far. Trust is not just about looking at a data quality scorecard and say, well, this ranked at a 90% on completeness or an 80% on accuracy. That would be easy if people could just look at a scorecard and trust data. That would make our lives easy. Trust is often people trust people. So how do you use people and their experience with the data to really anchor trust for your data products? And Marketplace helps exactly do that. So it tells you who the people are that are behind the data products, who are the other users or consumers of those data products, where and how have they been used in the past, and then really leverage that to build that fabric for trust. Obviously, you can also have scorecards to go along with it. It doesn't hurt, but that's not what the Marketplace emphasizes. And the last key theme that we talk about when we talk about our data marketplace is really being able to get that data product in your hands to be able to drive and deliver the outcomes that you care about. So this takes the form of picking up the data products, adding collaborators. It is not a one-person show. Typically, data analytics projects or any kind of efforts requires people from different disciplines coming together. So how do you add those collaborators? How do you empower them with the tools that they need and actually help drive and deliver new and enhanced versions of those data products that hopefully get published back to Marketplace so others can benefit from it? So that, in our view, is what a data marketplace is about, and how do you get through that is essentially what we're going to be talking about in the next 40 minutes. One more slide, and we'll switch perspectives here. But we often get the question, how is this different? This sounds a lot like a data catalog or a data market or some other, like a data platform of some kind. I think this is what separates a data marketplace in our view from some of the traditional tools that really are maybe components that enable marketplace. We really emphasize the experience. And as you'll see, we suggest that many organizations, as you embark on a data marketplace journey, really start with the people that you're going to try to empower through this marketplace. So the way we look at them is not through I have technical and non-technical or business and IT users. That's probably not the right way to look at it. We suggest looking at people basically through the experience you're trying to deliver for them. we recognize that every organization has people at various levels of maturity. They're still data stakeholders. They might be producers, consumers, or curators. They often are at different levels of maturity when you think of the continuum. And that's what the marketplace aims to get to. So based on your maturity, what are the behaviors, what are the interactions that you are trying to have with data products within your organization? And how do we give you the rest, the steps, or make it easy for you to do with the data what you need to do? And that's really what the marketplace is about. So how do we create those experiences? It requires for us to walk in your shoes, understand, well, I'm at this level of maturity, I'm intending to get these things done. How can the marketplace help make that seamless? What this approach also emphasizes is the collaboration. I said this before, data and analytics is a team sport. It requires not just each persona being able to engage and interact with the data. It's all about how do they interact with each other, and data being sort of that common language that they use to get to outcomes. And then the third part that we don't often tend to forget is no one is static. These hats, like I'm a producer, I'm a consumer, or I'm a custodian of data, these often change. So you might start out as a producer, you might take custodianship or ownership for that data product as it evolves, and then you might eventually become a consumer for someone else's data product because you see value in bringing the two together to drive to outcomes. And that is essentially what the experience tries to emphasize. So in a nutshell, that's what we think of as a data marketplace. Lead with the experience, think about the people that you're trying to empower through this journey, and make it about their experiences and make that as simple and automated as possible, with marketplace being the means to that end. So with that, we're going to just start with some quick perspectives. So I'll turn to our panelists here. Maybe Kent, you could just share with the audience a little bit about your data transformation journey at Eli Lilly, and where does marketplace fit within that?
Sure. So we actually started back in about mid-2018. Our Chief Data and Analytic Officer, Vipin Gopal, decided that we should have an enterprise data strategy. So we'd focused a lot at the time on advanced analytics and building that side of the organization, but really had never had an enterprise data strategy at Lilly. So we'd actually engaged PwC to help us in developing that strategy. And we work very closely with our enterprise data council. So we have a cross-functional group of both business and IT leaders from each one of our functions. And we use them as a sounding board to help us in developing that strategy, and out of that strategy resulted, some key findings. And much like any other company, right, challenges with being able to find data, access data. We had multiple different data warehouses, different initiatives in the cloud that were underway. So a lot of redundancies in terms of the infrastructure and in terms of the data. And we recognized coming out of that we kind of anchored around four major themes. Find, access, trust, and deliver. So improve how we find the data, improve the accessibility of that. As Karthik mentioned, the trust behind the data and the individuals are there, and then deliver it in a seamless way. And that's really the place also where marketplace comes into play.
I know, Srini, you're early on in your marketplace journey, but you're well along your way in your data transformation journey at Advance Auto. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what your motivations are for marketplace.
Absolutely. So in terms of, let me take you on a journey. I joined the company 4 years back. So early on, one of the biggest challenges we had is when an analyst wanted to find information, they didn't know the single source of truth. Where do I go find that information? Do I trust the data, right? Do I know who the person is who owns this information? The quality was the biggest problem because I don't trust the data because I don't know the owner of that information. And how do I bring all these pieces into a place where I can start to pull and start to slice and dice this information? So one of the early on steps we did as part of a data strategy transformation is to bring it into a common platform like a data lake and a single source like a data warehouse. We were able to collect that information. We were able to put it in a catalog so we can start to hydrate that with all this information, the metadata of this data that we're bringing in. So it was great for a certain time, but then we soon found out that the analysts were still missing the three big things, right? We call it the 3 Ws. Where is my data, right? Because you have to go to two different places, whether you have to go to the catalog and also go to your analytical tool to find this information. How do I get access to this information? How do I get the access controls to be able to process some of this information? And then once I do it, once I'm able to access this data, okay, now who do I reach out? The problem was still there because you know the source of truth where the data originates, but the data must have gone through multiple transformations. So if I'm a consumer of the data, I need to find a place where I can go, the last person who touched this information and be able to have that conversation. A lot of this was happening as you call the friend and you know the person who last used that information. Could be an analytical use cases like that where you can actually touch the report and say, hey, I know this person used this data. Let me get that information. I think that was the biggest challenges we had to go through. And I think one of the areas we started looking over a 1.5 years back is, okay, now how do we make this experience easier, right? And this is where the great internal data marketplace comes in, where it's not like I need to go to a catalog, I need to go to my reporting engine, I need to go find this information, but seamlessly connect the data producers of the data with the consumers of the data, right? I have a place where I can go find out who owns this information, so that builds that credibility and trust. One great example, I think Karthik was mentioning, we want to create this experience like an e-commerce experience that you go, whether it's an Amazon or any other e-commerce website, where you find all the data products, you find where those information or data assets generated, not at the asset level, but at data as a product level, right? You know those data products. You know who owns that information. The level of ownership is defined. And now, since I know that person, or I trust this data, can I actually get reviews of this data? Maybe the last person used it has provided that information, right? The reviews of this data sets. And now I can pull that asset I can check it out, pull it into my workbench, whether it's your reporting engine or analytical workbench, and be able to slice and dice that information. And I'm happy with it. I should be able to put that experience back into a platform where I can share some of that. And that's where we started to move over into the internal data marketplace and start to find ways in which we can collect and start to manage some of these assets.
Yeah, one thing I'd add on top of that is very, very similarly, it's about that experience. And that's where we'd invested for years and ahead of time in an enterprise data catalog. And that was used by our data governance folks. But as I listened to our CEO when he's talking about more of a data-driven culture, more data democratization, the tools that we had in place were not tools that you would want to put in front of an end user, envisioning more of business analysts and folks interacting with the data. So it was very important for us to create something with that user experience up front and that layer that sits on top of the tools. So we wanted to protect the investments that we had in the current tools, but we wanted to layer on top of that user experience. And that's, again, where Marketplace plays.
Awesome. So this is a pretty significant shift from the way you probably have dealt with data and data productization in the past. So Kent, maybe starting with you, what did it take to get the buy-in from the leadership, both within the IT or IS function as well as within the business functions that would now participate or collaborate on bringing this to life?
Yeah, it was a very difficult change. I mean, like many companies, we're a very federated organization, so trying to get anything done across the enterprise is often a challenge. So we started in the early part of 2019 with a strategy going around to all the different functions, socializing what we were wanting to do. And a lot of people bought into the vision, but in terms of prioritizing against everything that they were doing, it was a little bit of a challenge. But we kind of had a special moment in the summer of 2019. Our CEO was going around to each one of the functions and doing a deep dive into the IT and business side of what was going on. And so we had the opportunity to present kind of our thinking and our data strategy, and we did some external benchmarking against other life sciences and pharma companies. And in there, where we found was Lilly was lagging behind many of our peers with regards to enterprise data warehouses and what we're doing in the cloud, marketplaces, governance, and things like that. And I shared that competitive slide, and it was that point, I was only about 2 or 3 slides in, our CEO stopped the conversation. He said, hey, I totally get this. How do we do this faster? So immediately we got benefit from our CEO, and he said, hey, looked to the CIO at the time and said, hey, come back to me with a plan around how we can do this more aggressively. So we ended up coming back with a plan, initially, scoping out 2 years and what we would need to make this happen, both on the business and the IT side. So immediately we had buy-in from the CEO, and then he was supportive of the plan. We got our CFO on board, our CIO on board, then obviously my boss is the Chief Data Analytic Officer. So we immediately got the funding, got the credibility going behind doing that. And then we sold our program largely in operational efficiency. So again, a lot of redundancies across the organization. We sold it not really on the business value it would create, because it was hard to quantify that. We sold it on eliminating a lot of that redundancy in terms of infrastructure and data savings. And in fact, we actually had scoped it out to be about a 3.5-year kind of ROI or payback period, and we actually achieved that in under 2 years. So now we're kind of on the positive side with regards to the value we're seeing out of the infrastructure.
Awesome. Srini, what about yourself? I know you've talked about engaging with your key business leaders to get some of the buy-in going as you embark on this journey. Maybe you can share a little bit about where you are with that, what kind of sponsorship already received, and what it's going to take you to get you going.
Yeah, I think as Karthik said it before, it's a team sport, right? I sit within the IT organization. I engage with the business teams and business leaders. And it's both of a top-down as well as a bottoms-up impact, right? The way we started to demonstrate this vision is most of the data conversation happen at the asset level. It's a much more granular level. You talk about my MDM system generating this data or my source system generating a sales transaction information. But how do we elevate the conversation at a product level, right? And that's going to be critical. And that's one of the transformations we have been going through over the last year and a half is how do you stop talking about assets but talk about products, right? Data as a product. That needs to be at an elevated conversation. And it's both of a top-down, bottoms-up. You need to get the buy-in from the senior leadership. You need to get the buy-in from people who use this data on a regular basis. So, and that's something we did, is really to have a conversation at an asset to a product level. The other one is demonstrating the value of data products. One thing we started to do is, as we started to have a conversation at the product level, you can really start to transform or shift the mindset from a conversation. It's no longer at, hey, do I have access to these 3 data sets, but who's the product owner of this particular data asset? Like, who are actually managing it? So we started to work a lot with our business partners on this journey to make sure we identify the ownership. We know the person we can go and make sure that person is assigned as the data owner. But at the same time, it's something we need to jointly work together to make sure the quality of the data, the lineage of where the data transforms, right? So we actually have ability to go all the way to the source system and manage this information. The third one, which was critical, is we shifted the conversation from data production to data consumption. I think a lot of organization goes through where we generate a lot of data. We catalog a lot of that information in our systems, but I think the conversation is more around consumption, right? If you look at it from a lens of an analyst, your data science team, so people who are using this data on a regular basis, or even from a consumption, it's your like leadership who's actually consuming these reports, what kind of information that they need to make that conversation happen. And once you start elevating this from a product perspective, you provide them access to this data and say, hey, these are the 3 products that are actually generating this report or this insight or this value. And we have trust because we know the person who generated or stands behind this data. So I think it's a team sport. You need to really work together with different aspects. But like elevating the conversation from a data as a product was really like insightful for us, right? From a cultural transformation standpoint, but also in terms of how people start to use it.
Thank you, Srini. So we'll switch focus here. Again, we've gotten comments around what is marketplace, why it was relevant to each of these amazing organizations. So maybe we'll switch to a quick demo. And before we do that, I did want to acknowledge there are several team members, Bob Taylor, Chris Blessing, Jim Fulstrom, and some of the other team members, Will, Ryan, that weren't able to join us in person here. But they were all key leaders that contributed to this. From Eli Lilly, we have been committed to building the marketplace out in this journey for the last 2 years. So I just wanted to acknowledge their efforts before we transition to demoing what is essentially their asset here.
All right. So we're going to start with what's the experience that Marketplace enables for a data consumer, which if you remember back to that persona slide is that more left-hand side, less mature data users. So why would I come to the data marketplace? The first thing, to find a data product. I might not know exactly what I'm looking for, or I may have kind of the exact name, owner, but I want to kind of have it organized within the marketplace. It's also a place for me to interact with data experts, so they can answer questions that I have. They can help me connect with what the right data is for me, or help me figure out, something doesn't exist, and I need to put that into a demand backlog for a new data product that needs to be developed. And lastly, I can actually request access directly in the tool and track my request from submission to actual provisioning or receipt of the data. All right, so we're going to start off with finding data, and I'm in the market for some medical reference data. And there's a few ways I can look for it. One is I can search in kind of a key term. There's some filters you can use to narrow down the results. I'm hoping we didn't get kicked out. Here we go. So I can use kind of these filters over on the left to narrow down the results to something that's more applicable to me. How do I pick the right one? So there's kind of brief descriptions that I can read through on this main page, or I can click into each of the options to get a lot more detail about what that data product is. So a typical data consumer, they want to know some background about the data that they're looking at. They want to know where it comes from, how it's maintained, how it can be delivered to them, what are the endpoints and delivery methods available, and then are there restrictions or policies around how they're allowed to use, interact with, share that type of data. And lastly, are there other data products that are maybe more applicable that I can kind of browse as well? So this is suggesting that there's another option here that may be better for my use case that I can click into as well. If that's still not enough, if I want to get more into the content of the data, you have this data tab here. And you're able to see either a sanitized preview or maybe kind of a small subset of the data depending on the security. So I can actually get a sense of what's the structure of the data, what's the content that I'm going to get access to. And then I can also see, what are the definitions of some of the key terms? Can I actually interpret what that data is? And if that's still not enough, we also have a community tab where any users that are interested in this data or have access to it can collaborate in kind of a Q&A style. So I can submit a question, and that gets curated into like a community-driven FAQ. And then once I've decided this is what I'm looking for, I have the ability to very easily request access here. There are two scenarios that we typically see when you're requesting access. One is you're requesting in the context of a project. So I have kind of a shared use case across multiple data sets, across multiple users, and I want to submit a request on behalf of that project as a whole. Or in my case, what I'm going to do is say that I don't have a project, and this is more of like an exploratory ask. I want to look at the data. I want to see if it meets my need, and it's really just for me. So I'll click into here. It prompts me to enter what I want to use it for. Just in the interest of time, we're going to say demo. So what's the business need? How do I intend to use it? And then go to the next. It forces me to review the policies associated with the data. So this is putting accountability on the requester to say, I've looked at the policies associated with this data. I've acknowledged that my use is in alignment with that. It'll get reviewed again by your kind of governance persona, but it's telling them up front, I understand this is the restriction around the data, and I acknowledge that. And after that, I can request access. Last part we'll show for the data consumer is that tracking process. So once I've requested a data set, it goes into a queue. We'll get a little bit more into that with the governance persona, but I'm able to see kind of all my active requests, what status they're in, and then once the data has been provisioned, what are the connection details or steps for me to actually connect to that data set. And then we'll just maybe quickly pass to Kent. So Kent, can you tell us a little bit about how this experience has impacted data consumers at Lilly?
Yeah, so you kind of hit on a little bit is prior to this, we had data sitting in a variety of different places, often in SharePoint sites across the company, different data catalogs, Excel spreadsheets. It was challenging to understand what data we had. If you did understand what data we had, you didn't know who to contact, you didn't know how to access it, you didn't know how you could use it, you didn't know the privacy or the information security classifications on that data. And it was very challenging and took a lot of time to get access to that data. Now what we've been able to do with Marketplace is you can drive people to a single site. So you no longer need to chase down the location, where to go for this. And then immediately when you start to search for the data that exists in there, you can also, as you saw up there, identify a data owner. So we have somebody assigned to that data. So now you know what the data is, you know a little bit about it, you know who to contact. And as Victoria showed, if you have questions regarding that, it doesn't become an email chat back and forth. There's actually a record created in there. So that chat is kept in there. There's an audit trail. It makes it very easy for both the producer and the consumer of that information to be able to interact if they have questions as they go forward. And then it's also easy for the consumer, as they request that access, to track the status. So often you didn't know, well, what happened to my request? Then you're sending multiple email follow-ups in order to understand, well, what's happening. And there now you can track your requests, and eventually as that data is provisioned, it shows up in your data, so my data that's up in there. So going forward, you understand what you've already have access to, you understand how to consume that. And then the other thing is we've got different ways that data can be consumed, so preferably via APIs, but we also have dashboards and direct connections and structured ways that data can be accessed. So there's different ways you can choose to consume that rather than just having, maybe one common way that you were doing it in the past. So definitely streamlined and forced everybody towards this common place in order to do this.
Thanks so much, Kent. All right, so we'll move on to our second persona, which is our governance upholder. This could be a data steward. It could be someone very senior within the organization that's considered a data approver. They kind of put their final stamp of approval on providing access. Or it could be someone who's a data SME, so they know a certain area of data really well, and they help to interact with potential consumers to identify what the right data is for them. So the kind of central landing page for that persona is going to be your My Data tab. So it surfaces up for you what's most important, what's on my hit list right now. It looks like a lot of stuff. But that's going to be kind of, someone submitted a question in one of those community threads. I have an access request pending. Someone's trying to figure out what data they're looking for. If I'm assigned in that queue, it will pop up here as something requiring my attention. Some of the other things that a governance upholder may want to be able to do is update their entry. So maybe a policy or security rule has changed, and they need to go back in and update the entry to reflect that. They're able to do that within Marketplace. Or if there's been kind of an enhancement or an improvement to the data product that they own, they can go in and update that metadata to make sure that that's clear to the consumers. What we're going to show today is how do we manage those requests. So we're going to click into this first one here. So I can see what that requester submitted, so that same thing that I populated as the consumer. I can see that information around what's the business need, how's that person intending to use the data. I will populate myself, does this require some type of consultation with legal, with privacy, with security, depending on how sensitive that data is. I'll want to be able to know, if it isn't kind of fresh in my mind, what are the policies that govern that data. I'm able to kind of easily review that there and make sure that the consumer understands. As Kent mentioned, there's this chat feature that all gets kind of stored and logged. So any communication that you have with the requester is stored in this one central place. And I can also include any notes, if they told me the delivery method that they prefer, even though they don't have approval yet, I can kind of record that and keep that within the notes so it's all kind of logged and I don't lose sight of any of that conversation or decisions that have been made over the course of processing the request. And then lastly, there's a way to build in queues or kind of multi-layered approval processes. So in this case, I'm playing more of the role of making sure that the request is clear, that it meets the criteria before I send it up to someone who's maybe more senior that's just going to do the final approval. So I'm going to say that this looks good, and I'm going to route it up to the next person to actually approve the request. Okay. And so this just makes it a lot easier to know kind of what all the requests are versus a lot of organizations where it's, phone a friend. How many people ask me for this data? Do I have kind of that clear audit trail of everything that happened, recorded, and accessible, or do I have to kind of dig through multiple places to figure out what that history was with the request? And after the fact, I can go back and see who's gotten access. If I need to go and make sure that that person still needs access, I have that complete list of who is using that data or has access to the data at any point in time. So Ken, we'll pass back to you. How have governance upholders been impacted by this marketplace?
Sure. So, you just highlighted one of the key reasons why we also decided to develop Marketplace versus buy it was really the workflow. So the whole request to access, request consultation is something that we have full control over. And it's really been a differentiator for us. So what's been key for the governance upholders is we have a variety of different request and access or consultation processes. We've been able to standardize on a common process. So how we've seen more adoption is actually, for example, our real-world evidence team. They had a request for access process, but they saw the benefits of us having this already automated and built in, and now they've moved all of the RWE requests, the real-world data requests, over to this platform, and they manage our requests across the company in this. So that workflow, that request for access was key. The other thing for governance stakeholders is that in certain parts of our organization, like clinical, access to the data kind of depends on what you want to do with it. So the other benefit is by creating a request for consultation, it allows somebody to put in how they want to use the data, but somebody on the other side then to understand, is that the appropriate use of that data? The correct data? Should there be other data that they're also including in there? So the ability to have that interaction, so where the request to access is more you're requesting a product, the request for consultation definitely brings a person into play into that. So now you immediately have somebody engaged that's the expert, or this me on that data, that can be a part of that. So there's quicker time in terms of people getting access and then being able to use that data for their different use cases. The other thing it's created is an easy metadata update. So the owner of that data product can easily update it, make changes. If there's maybe certain training that's required, they can add that into the workflow, certain policy updates that can easily add it in as well. The other benefit is you can track who has access. So in the past, you might not know. You've got a variety of different requests over the years. You forget who has access to what data. This gives you a very clear view around who has access. It also gives you the ability to communicate with those end users because they're defined, and you can also revoke or change that access. going forward. And it's also make it simpler to grant access through the Active Directory. Before, you weren't sure who should have access at what levels. It simplified that from a security perspective as well. So definitely made it a lot easier for those that are managing that data to ensure and make sure that things from a risk and compliance perspectives are maintained. And that's really helped a lot with the trust aspect as well in terms of both the producer and the consumer of data.
All right, and Anirban is going to walk through the data producer flow and how that works.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So I'm going to walk us through a data producer's view. So like we've seen the consumer view, we've seen the governance views, but I, as a user, could come in with the intention of finding data in the marketplace and then using that data in, in analytical projects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to see what kind of projects am I a part of, or what kind of projects do I want to undertake. So here's a very quick view that shows me that I'm a part of 9 projects right now, and I'm actively collaborating with my team members on this particular project. So very quickly, I can always go in and I can see, as part of this project, what was the intention of starting up this project, and then what kind of data was I going to be using, and what was the intended use for each one of those pieces. As I'm collaborating, I have a place where I can continue to document my project notes, GitHub links, reference sites, keeps coming up. So it's one place where all the materials are stored by the project teams. And projects evolve. They start today. Some of them take a year, some of them take 2 years, some of them take a few weeks. But the type of data that is needed within the projects, they continue to evolve. So sometimes you can come in, find new data sets within the marketplace and actually start adding them into your project. Or we often get Excel files. So there has to be a simple way to use that data that you locally have alongside the data that's being sourced from the marketplace. There's an upload functionality which says, all right, let's bring the data into its secure environment. It gives you about 90 days to explore and play along with the data. If 90 days is not sufficient and you need a longer period, that's when the forcing starts happening. Well, it's data that you've ingested, you've brought in. You need to start documenting what that information is, because the appropriate level of controls need to be put across that data. So again, explore your data for 90 days. That's not there within the marketplace construct. And then if you want it for a longer time, then make sure that it's documented and well classified for use. The third thing I want to talk about is project collaborators keep changing. We saw 3 spectrums of personas. Someone who was an expert super user, maybe a consumer of data. Someone who was a steward now also needs to probably collaborate within the project construct. So the project collaborators continue to grow through the project's life cycle. And therefore, a simple way to continue to add people to your projects. And every time someone gets added, all the access requests that were raised for the previous members are all re-raised for that newly added member. And lastly, no analytics is successful without tools. So over here starts a tool suite, all the tools that we bring in. Maybe that be a visualization tool, an advanced analytics tool. Maybe that be a simple data wrangling tool. Whatever the tool suite looks like and is needed to make a project team successful, all starts getting added over here. Historically, the challenge that's faced is, well, what's the process to get access to that tool? How do I make sure that all my team members have that access? Through the marketplace, those workflows are also streamlined. So anything that's around acquiring licenses, acquisitions, et cetera, if it's once been provisioned or provided for a project team, everyone in that team should be able to gain access to those tools in a click of a button. So again, turning it back to you, Kent, what were the drivers behind getting tools into the marketplace?
Yeah, the main thing was really about the user experience. Again, what we kind of learned across the journey of marketplace and where we've now pivoted is what Anirban just shared is around the project, recognizing that people come to the marketplace, there's something they want to do. So we've tried to pivot more about what you're trying to do. So as Srini shared, as What's that consumption side? You're wanting to do something with it. So we're now creating that experience around the project. So it's all an integrated set of activities. So you have the ability to come in a project. You can find trusted data. So the things that are in marketplace have gone through a vetting process that you know they're the most trusted sources. So you know as a data consumer, as a producer, you're operating with the most trusted sources. So you find the data, you quickly get the access. You're able to quickly add contributors. So sometimes you're working on things as a data science team. Now you can quickly add those different individuals. From a data governance perspective, as they all request access, it comes across as one access request. So you don't have all these separate access requests. That governance person can make the decisions for that entire project. You're able to put in there what you're trying to do around that data. You understand the lineage of that data, a little bit more of the characteristics around that data before you begin to use it. Then what we tried to do is, now that you've got the space provisioned, is then start to apply the tools. So we've got the tools that you see up here, but we also have the series of what we call bring your own analytic tools as well. So we have a variety of different kinds of analytic and data visualization tools that are also part of this. So again, trying to create this one seamless experience. And then what we're trying to encourage is the individuals that do this is how do you start to put the data back into our infrastructure? So we've actually worked to build a cross-functional enterprise data backbone on AWS. So we have all functions at Lilly and in fact many geographies all in the same common backbone. So we're trying to encourage people as they develop models and insights, it's very easy to be able to put that data back into our backbone, make it available via marketplace, and then others can come and see the insights and the learnings and then connect with you. So what we're trying to create over time is more of an insights-driven organization where the knowledge the individuals are learning can quickly be put back in for the broader organization to have access to and then continue to share from that going forward. So it starts to become more of a multiplying effect as we go forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. So building on Ken's point, we'll show you the last piece, which is the more of the final leg of what a producer does. We worked in a project construct. We've developed new data products, pipelines, analytical models, many other things. But the last step is always about reusability and making sure that you're able to share it back within the same marketplace community. Again, there are a series of ways you could do that. One of the key ones that's being worked upon that has seen a lot of uptake is the create new marketplace entry. If previous to this, a wizard of this sort that coming into play, it was all about, hey, we need to put it in a catalog. We need to make sure that we understand how to use the catalog even before we put it there, and then making sure that all the appropriate facets of the catalog are well connected so that the data that shows up in the marketplace is the actual version. But the wizard actually expedites that process. So no longer is it an overhead in order to kind of start doing the documentation. A simple place where one can come in, put in their name, put in the name for the data product, describe the data product, say which different business units or what's the business area that's really producing it or the way it appropriately needs to be defined. A good way of classifying your data. Again, there is a recommendation engine that Lilly has built in order to make sure that if there are certain types of attributes or information that's present within that data set, then it's automatically recommending what kind of a classification you should put in, but it still is putting back the ownership on the users to say, well, this is, even though it's saying it's a red data set, it potentially could be orange because it's been a few fields have been masked and have been identified. Managing the key contacts who are going to be taking ownership of that data. So I, as a person who's publishing it, could own it. I could also play a subject matter expert role there. There could be someone else who's, maybe a Victoria, who's also a subject matter expert on this topic. She could also be, added onto it. And finally, it's all about enabling access, making sure that, if it is in a state where I'm okay sharing that information, automating the access to that data, then a simple way to start putting those roles and appropriate AD groups, et cetera, alongside the data, and also making sure that the owners, access approvers are well documented. Once that's ready, it's created. It goes into a phase where someone can still revoke it, but after a particular point, the doors are open for it to kind of get into the marketplace. So, Kent, going back to you, anything else that you think was most impactful apart from just pushing it back into the marketplace from a data definition wizard perspective?
Oh, I mean, the main thing highlighting here is was made it very easy for individuals to be able to publish in the marketplace. I mean, one of the biggest challenges that we find is that particularly for secondary use cases like this, when somebody's created insight, is what incentivizes them to put the data back in. So we try to make it very easy to be able to put that data or that insight back in and create that data product. And that's actually been, and we'll probably get to this eventually, one of our biggest challenges around kind of the secondary uses of data. People are all on board when it's about getting it in for the primary uses for their own function, but trying to incentivize people around the secondary uses of data, so making it available for those that they don't know who might want that data or what questions that might ask. So that's why we're trying to work through ways to incentivize and make it very easy through kind of wizards and other things to be able to create the data products and update the metadata.
All right, back to you, Karthik.
Awesome. Thank you, Anirban. So I know, Kent, we've had you do a lot of the talking. Maybe we walked through a demo. I know, Srini, this is your first time seeing this in action as well. So just looking at your thoughts, and what does this resonate with kind of your vision for advanced auto parts? And then if you were to stand up a capability like this, how would you measure success in your context?
No, I think that's a great, by the way, great demo. And something that we have done it, and I'm sure most of you have, we have a similar experience, but in different tools. Like we have like catalog tools, we have some of the other tools. And something for us is we had been doing some of this in distributed tools. Now we are bringing that into a common experience, right? That's our vision. I would say the 3 success factors that, and most of you must be going through the same journey, for us is having the right foundation. And for us, the biggest foundation is governance, right? You need to have a solid governance because you need to know who has access to what information. Once you give them access, you need to be able to measure like who has that information, if it's a PII, non-PII data. So I would say the foundation for most of you would be the governance. The second one I would say is measurements, right? You need to start measuring the output, like how many people are using this data products, who is actually accessing this information. Are they able to share, right, some of this? So you need to have your own internal KPIs that you drive. So we internally set up our own KPIs and said, hey, what would the success looks like for us? Like how many people are sharing a data product? And to Kent's point, are we creating secondary data products? Like we took 2 products, we created a new one. Are people going to put it back in the catalog or put it back in the marketplace, right? So for others to start using it. That was a key factor for us because we wanted to make sure the data products, it's not a single use, but it's multi-use. How do we make sure people are starting to use it? The third one, I think that's key, and that was part of the demo, is it should be easily searchable, right? For us, it's the metadata that you put as part of a product is going to be valuable because it's not just what you are going to use it for your own consumption, but others in your organization are able to understand more details of that data product. I go to a place, I find this information, I understand the reviews, I can go look at the person who created this product, I can actually look at the comments to see how people are using it, so I can get some examples and stuff. So I think the more you make it easier searchable, because otherwise what will happen is they'll come in, they'll find out the product is not available, or maybe it's not what they're looking for. The one last thing I would add is, and one of the key KPIs for us is quality, right? Because once they come in, they find this product, they don't like the quality or something is bad, they'll move away. So we wanted to make sure we have our own internal measurements to figure out what is the quality of this product. How do we make sure when analysts are using it, make it a seamless experience from the self-service platform side of it. I have a place I can go touch this data, like figure out, slice and dice through this information. I like it, that's great. Then I can go in and really do a project if needed. So we need an exploration, I think, similar to the demo, is where I can go touch this information, get a feel of it before I can go off and do some of that stuff.
Thank you, Srini. So last couple of questions here for our panelists, and I'll open it up for Q&A to the audience. But Kent, you've lived through this now for 3 years. So any lessons learned that you'd like to share? There were probably challenges you anticipated getting into this, but were some of those, have those borne true, or have you encountered challenges that maybe you didn't foresee getting into a transformation like this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things, particularly since working with our business, it was around the findability and accessibility of data. I thought there'd be a lot more people in terms of wanting to promote the shareability of the data beyond their function. So as I commented earlier, they're all for sharing within their functions. For example, clinical. Well, yeah, they want to open it up between the different parts of our clinical or medicines development for sharing, but the challenge is then how do you get people to spend the time to promote the secondary uses of data? Because in order to create this, and then what does it mean to be a data owner? Oh, so you mean somebody from marketing could come and ask me a question of somebody in clinical or somebody in another organization? So I think it's the change management aspect of people understanding what they're signing up for, What does it really mean? What's this whole data democratization thing really mean? What's my role in this? So I think, it's the OCM aspect is probably one of the biggest things. The other thing is really securing that business sponsorship up front. What we tried to focus on early on was prioritize use cases. So we focus with certain parts of research, medical development, and our commercial business areas around patients. So we did a lot of things around patient and around the healthcare provider. And prioritize the data use case. So that was allow us to get the data in very quickly into our backbone and into marketplace. But now, again, back to that secondary uses, how do you promote the usage beyond that? So the third thing I would add would be around literacy. I think the other big thing is now that we're seeing is getting people to understand what we're trying to do here. So in some cases, I feel like we've almost built ahead with Marketplace. We've created this platform, and those that are using it are getting tremendous value out of it. But the real intent across Lilly, again, is how do we become more insights-driven? How do you open up to more individuals? So, trying to promote that literacy more broadly. And we do have some initiatives. We have a Lilly Data Analytic Institute, but we focused a lot around certain segments of our business for that. I think really, as many have shared here this week, really expanding our literacy efforts more broadly across the company would definitely help.
Yeah, I think the one point I would add there is the cultural transformation is definitely one of the key aspects, right? The OCM is one of the key aspects. I mean, I'm sure with every data product you have to go through, or projects you have to go through it. But I think the cultural shift in terms of for not worrying about the source, but looking at data products, be able to consume that information and do something with it. And really the culture of sharing that you can instigate within the organization, that's going to be a key aspect too.
Yeah, I think that also just defining what a data product is. When we spent so much time around defining what a data product or whole product approach to this, we also a lot around roles and responsibilities. Different organizations had different terms for different things, so we had to start to focus more on the activities they were doing versus the titles. So, and then the other biggest change was around data ownership. So to the shareability, a lot of organizations felt like they owned the data. We tried to position differently as around data as an asset at Lilly. Lilly owns the data, you don't own the data. So we've tried to pivot more towards a term around trustee. For the period of time that you're working with that data or you're the governance person for that data, yeah, you're entrusted with certain sets of responsibilities that are typical within the governance function. But at the end of the day, Lilly owns that data, and we need to promote its shareability and its reuse with the appropriate security and privacy and risk controls in place.
Awesome. So thank you, Ken. Thank you, Srini. Very insightful discussion and comments. Thank you for that. We have about 8 minutes here, Maria. I know I've gotten a couple of prompts. I'm sorry.
17 questions online.
All right. So maybe, would it be all right to start with the audience here?
Yes.
Maybe we'll open it up for audience. Please go ahead.
Yeah, and please, if you could go to the mic, if you can make it over there. I know it's tight in here. By the way, just so you know, at the peak, you had 277 people attending. Plus, this is probably a full house of 70 people.
So, and that speaks to the fact it was a great talk and demonstration. Thank you. So, mine's a boundary question. And so, data marketplace, the concept is great. The vision you're implementing is clear, but how does it differ from a full-featured enterprise data catalog, platform, software as a service? You get data catalog, workflows, routing, request management, we engage stewards, governance, scan, discover data, track lineage. Is there a boundary here? Is a marketplace significantly different from what we can get from one of the valued partners in the hall for an enterprise catalog?
So it's a great question, so thank you for that. This is a debate back in 2018. So as Ken pointed out, Lilly has always had data catalogs. This is not new. They've had data catalogs since 2013, probably earlier. So data catalogs were not new to this organization. It's a pretty mature data organization. But data catalogs weren't, at least from our perspective, giving them the capabilities that you just saw. And so there were a lot of debates, to your point. Some of the capabilities look similar and seem to have the similar intent. But the outcomes that they were driving to were not coming through. And maybe I'll let Ken talk about, what was it? What drove you to do this versus going down that traditional track and continuing to build out more and more cataloging?
I mean, it's really two things. So user experience, we did not find with the tools that we had. I mean, for the data governance folks, yeah, it worked okay, but it was pretty laborious in order to do that. And, you look at the tools like, there's no way I'm going to put this tool in front of, a broader audience. So user experience was one of the top things in that kind of the front end. The second thing was really the workflow and the pace at which we can make changes. I mean, yeah, there's some great development that's also happened since 2018 with some of even the vendors we work with today, but what we didn't find was the flexibility. I mean, in here we have the flexibility to add in tools, to change the workflows, to link in different organizations, and I think it's the control of that experience on the consumer side that we own, and then also we've delivered this entire program on an agile basis. So we're able to quickly we do quarterly program increment planning. We get input from the business around the prioritization of features. We roll those out in sprint fashion on an ongoing basis. Our ability to quickly adjust. But the thing that we're always doing, though, is we are monitoring the external marketplace. Do we want to be in the business of building this front end? No. But we realize there's competitive advantage because, there's never going to be less information, right, in the world. This is a tool that we believe is a competitive advantage because it opens up visibility across Lilly, connecting the people and the data and giving them the tools to be able to do this. Yeah, there's a point in time where there's a tool that can do this by all means. We don't want to be in the business of doing this. But again, we come back each year, every 18 months, and we kind of check what's happening in the marketplace. We've yet to find anybody that's able to do what we're doing here.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add there is if you look at the foundation for any successful marketplace, you need a strong catalog, right? Because that's definitely, I would say, most organizations start off by building a solid catalog. One thing we found out is basically that is your catalog for all assets in the company. From a consumption perspective, maybe they don't care about every asset. And one of the challenges we started to find is where do I go find that information? Is the catalog, the tool that you're on it right now, is it easy to find that information? Can I look at it from a product? Can I actually go down and look at the details? And that's where one of the ways we are looking at the marketplace. It really makes it easier from a consumption perspective. It simplifies the way people come and interact with a tool like this and say, okay, now I'm in this tool, I can go find my information, I can get out and do what I'm supposed to do, which is analyze the data, not worry about where to find within the catalog, right? So I think for us, it's like the catalog, think of it like a foundation for a successful marketplace. You definitely need to start there. Marketplace, I would also call it, it's a new coin term for something where you are shifting the organization to make it seamless. I think there's going to be a maturity cycles you need to go through, iterations of products, custom build, as well as out of the box custom products that can get you there, right? But I would say it's more of a journey, like in terms of getting started with the right catalog, build the right capability, so you have some kind of a place you can go find all this information. Now I actually started to connect with the consumers of the data with some of the products I build and make that experience seamless, right? It's almost like one of the examples I think of from auto parts is you have a distribution center where you have all the parts. You only send some products or some parts into the store for easy consumption. And that would be something similar to a marketplace where you actually subset some of the data that people are caring about, they're consuming it. And then from a consumption perspective, now you go to the marketplace, find that information. I can still interact with my catalog if I need to, but I'm actually doing my job and I'm effective at that point.
Yeah, so I'll close that out with, we're not underplaying what a data catalog does. There is a data catalog behind the scenes here. It's just as it's transparent to the end user, and that was the intent. Sorry.
It's all hard work. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we have another question.
My question is a little bit just follow up into the how sausage making process. So the vision is awesome. So me personally firmly believe that's the direction we should go towards. So the hard part is we are having challenges. So I work for NYU, and my team is exactly trying to move towards that. So I'm so excited to learn from you. So we have catalog, right? We made the investment, purchased a very expensive data governance tool, and we are building very slowly that catalog, right? So when you created this, did you create this marketplace as a homegrown solution on top of the catalog, or you purchased something else? Because I was Googling up like busy, so I go, what did Eli Lilly do? So I saw an article about like is that the Informatica? I think published something like, so then I checked my team lead, say, oh, they use Informatica. Then my team lead said, oh, Informatica is super expensive. So how do we afford it?
Well,
so I'm like, let me ask a question.
Yeah, Informatica is core to what sits behind Marketplace. So we use both Axon and EDC, so the business glossary and more to the discovery side of that, and it's feeding both the business and the operational and technical metadata into Marketplace. So it's very key, and that's really what we saw too, back kind of to the question earlier, what we didn't see in the tools that we currently had was that workflow and that UI. So we wanted to layer Marketplace on top of that, but we also wanted to protect the significant investments that we've made already in the informatic infrastructure. I mean, there's different catalog vendors you can select from, and we didn't see any benefit of changing. We felt felt very comfortable and very good about what we had. We wanted to take it to another level, and that's why we added Marketplace on top.
So what you are saying is Informatica was chosen as the governance cataloging tool.
Yes.
So you already made that investment. So, that's great because we made the same similar investment. And then right on top, you build this very user-driven, like user-friendly interface, and then kind of just take advantage of the catalog.
Right. I mean, it even sits behind the scenes, and we have ServiceNow. And I mean, we've tried to make that thin layer that just links through different APIs and other things to other systems. And our intent would be to continue to develop in that way. Again, as long as until a vendor or something comes out with a product that can equal or better. Yep.
Great, thank you so much. That makes me feel so much better because I think we can do it too.
Okay, so the
ahead. Maybe one more.
says, I do want to get at least one question from online. So we are. I know.
So we have similar challenges. I'm also from Tufts Medicine Health System. The Informatica tool works great for the systems that it can scan to bring that metadata to marketplace-like product. Unfortunately, for our EHR, Informatica is not able to scan, and that's where most of the data resides. So the marketplace becomes incomplete if it's not able to scan the key system in the organization. I don't know if there is a similar experience where you were able to get a comprehensive view of all the data sets, and were there any systems in your company that Informatica was not able to reach and scan to build the metadata?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some systems that we're not able to scan, but we did have to go through a process where we updated some of our policies and procedures and got more of a blanket ability to go out and scan a lot of the systems that exist across Lilly. So it was just that we had to go to each system owner and try to get their acceptance. And at the end of the day, we're just looking for metadata. We're not getting down into the data itself. So we had to change some policies and procedures to allow us to more blanket service what's out there. But I'm sure there's some systems that we don't have access to, so I can't say that it's 100%, but it's probably a pretty good coverage.
Yeah, and also one example, what we started to look at is the data virtualization part of it. Some data we bring into a warehouse, we consume it, but there are some sources which could be more of a time gap. Maybe we don't need it for the entire user base, we only need it for a few months or a few years. So that way, we actually virtualize some of the data into a catalog and a marketplace so people can go consume it for a certain time. But then the expectation, if the usage is critical, then we can bring it into a warehouse. So we are looking at multiple options there too.
The other thing real quick is Marketplace today largely only sits on top of our enterprise data backbones. It's only the data we've moved into the AWS environment, which is over probably 300 different data products or assets.
So Maria, I know
We have no time.
We have no
but
time.
I would say one of the top questions was what was the technology underneath the marketplace. So if you want to go back and add more detail on that. But yeah, there's some other great questions that I would just ask you to spend some time to go back and answer those questions if we didn't get a chance to do it today. But this was super popular subject, and I learned a lot as well. And thank you for the session. Thank you.
Thank you.